Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With me today is Daniel McAdams, our co-host. Daniel, good to see you.
Glad you're back, Dr. Paul. How are you?
Me too. I like to be at home, but I like to go on trips too if I'm going to meet interesting people.
Exactly.
So, anyway, we're here back at the table here trying to figure things out, and right now I think that we do try to get information out to help educate people. That's a general theme of what we do on what's really happening. But in this case, I think what we could say that we're doing now is trying to get people to understand the difference between a whistleblower and a person blowing smoke.
Yeah, there you go.
And there's a lot of argument. What is this whistleblower thing? And don't we have to protect them? Yeah, we have to protect them. Nobody's allowed to know them. No, I don't think it's quite that way. And there was a certain senator that brought this subject to the Senate floor, and I think he did a pretty good job in explaining the difference between the two. Whistleblowing, he said, under the circumstances, we should have whistleblowers, but he also makes the point that the whistleblower can't cancel out the Sixth Amendment. They can't go overboard. So we want to talk about the differences. If people were hearing about the whistleblower, if they're not true whistleblowers, what are they? And I imagine we could think of a few terms that we could use for the people doing that, and it would have nothing to do with partisanship or meanness or nastiness or hatred about why they're saying and doing these things. So it's an interesting subject, but a very serious subject. I think it touches on a lot of subjects. Of course, impeachment is one, the whistleblower, and also you know whether or not people are telling the truth, and how these people should be treated. And we do have a little bit of history about whistleblowers. We've defended many whistleblowers, and Rand mentions in his little talk that he gave on the Senate floor, one of our favorite whistleblowers, of course, is Ed Snowden.
Yeah, and it was a good speech, and it was a speech where he introduced a bill that he's putting out to actually broaden whistleblower protections, make them more appropriate for contractors as well as employees. And let's just cut to a clip that we have of Senator Paul on the floor where he makes a great statement about whistleblowers and this sudden realization among some in Congress that whistleblowers are good. Let's hear Rand.
When Edward Snowden exposed the breadth of unconstitutional government spying, that everything you can do can be seen and stored by the government without cause, without an individualized order, in secret, in bulk, in defiance of the Fourth Amendment, not one finger was raised by those voices who are so proud now to defend whistleblowers. Not one of them stood up for Edward Snowden.
Yeah, that not only did they not raise a single finger to help Snowden, all of the people now that are crying over this poor whistleblower, they wanted him not only in jail, they wanted to see him hung.
Yes, and you know, the big point here is when Congress passes a law, if there's any confusion or the law is used erroneously, they can't use it to cancel out a constitutional right.
Yeah.
And that's more or less what they're doing. But there is a compatibility. The two can work together. But if somebody's going to get accused of a crime, let alone a crime significant enough to impeach a president, I would think the right to listen to the accuser should be absolute. I mean, it couldn't be clearer in the Constitution. And here they're trying to proceed. Of course, right now they're bringing people forward and saying, well, maybe he's the whistleblower, and you don't know how many whistleblowers there are, and they had to fight over all this. But I just think two things. If we don't get to hear and Trump gets to hear the accusers, I think the other thing that should be challenged, do these guys that they're bringing up, are they true whistleblowers? Are they really performing the function of a whistleblower, or are they political hacks? Are they participating in a cabal trying to get rid of the president? And I think the evidence is pretty strong that Trump has challenged a lot of people, and even before he was sworn in, the die was cast. There would be a concerted effort on a daily basis, you know, that he would be impeached. And this is coming from us, I believe, you included, that it isn't the president that we think is the greatest president in the world. Yeah. I mean, but we have to be talking about fairness. I mean, and constitutionality compared to what? You know, and I think it's a great point you already made. Is that these other guys who say that we have to protect the whistleblowers, even those who aren't whistleblowers, they're just blowing smoke and they're spouting off political things, and they have to deserve the protection because somebody might want to kill them. You know, this is a far stretch.
And I would say, you know, and we read the comments on the show, and we're grateful to people to give their views. But a lot of people do say, "Oh, I'm done with Ron Paul. He's just in with Trump now. Forget it." If anyone who thinks that, they should go back and follow from the beginning of the 2015 campaign everything that you said about Trump and tell us. And it's just sad that people think in these kind of binary terms. Oh, you're for Trump. No, the process. There's something really wrong with it. And if you don't like Trump, vote against him next time. That's simple. That's how we do things. But the impeachment process is back to the original point you made. It is inherently a political process. Yeah, so people will argue, no, he doesn't have the right to face his accuser. This is a political process. And Rand makes a point in a piece that he had in The Hill that said that the president could face criminal charges after he's out of office based on these things. So he actually does face a possibility of criminal charges. In that case, most definitely, without question, he should have the right to face the person who is accusing him of a crime. It's a no-brainer, you know, and it's a good point.
Well, you have to concede that being impeached is a penalty for some wrongdoing that they're inferring, and therefore, I don't think there's any doubt that the president, under our Constitution, should have the right to know who's making the accusation. You know, I've had a few times this happen to me in some of the organizations in medicine. There were charges made, and I would have been penalized, but I didn't know who made them. And that was the first thing I want to know. Who said that?
Who said it?
Who said it? This, I think somebody's mixed up, but it's a terrible feeling of somebody accusing you of something, and you don't know who they are. And this, of course, is the outrage. And I think, yes, there are penalties for committing crimes, but the penalty of being impeached or kicked out of office, that's a pretty serious penalty.
Yeah.
And I think this is politic, and I go back. They've run out of steam. They don't have the answers, and foreign policy's a mess. And I think the spending is totally out of control. You know, if you were looking for an emergency, why wouldn't they talk about the budget, you know, or something like that? That's going to explode in our faces and attack us in all ways.
Yeah, if this is a slam dunk, as everyone wants us to believe, then why don't they want us to know who the guy is? Why shouldn't he have to answer questions if the whole thing is a slam dunk? So it's their very admission that this is not an ironclad case. But, you know, Rand points that out, first of all, because you should face your accuser. Sixth Amendment doesn't supersede statute or anything of that nature. But he also makes another point. These are the two important points he makes in his speech and in the article. This whistleblower is also a material witness. And that's another reason why he should appear. He worked for Biden when Joe Biden and Hunter were involved in Ukrainian corruption. He worked the Ukraine desk, the National Security Council staff. He traveled to Ukraine. He was involved with the aid to Ukraine when Biden threatened Ukraine that if you don't fire this guy, you're not going to get your aid. He was involved in all this. He was a material witness to possibly a crime that was committed by Biden. And Rand goes on to say, why shouldn't Joe Biden himself and Hunter Biden appear before this? Because this is potentially a crime. He's an accuser and a material witness, this fellow Charmella, who everyone says is the whistleblower, so why not appear?
You know, I'm going to make a suggestion on how people can spot a true whistleblower and somebody who is fibbing and blowing smoke. And one is the reaction. These are not absolutes, but I think they give us a pretty good hint. If they are fake whistleblowers, like we're dealing with, the people out there that are claiming whistleblowers, and they're going to be held in high esteem, especially by the major media and maybe many others. That all of a sudden they're heroes. But if somebody is a whistleblower and they are despised or imprisoned, they're probably telling the truth.
Yeah.
Lying is necessary for people who want to maintain power. You know, in a powerful government, so they tolerate lies. And this is it. It's sorting out truth from fiction. You know, on this, but it's not very often that the true whistleblower is held in high esteem. And I think what Rand's speech does, it calls attention to a large audience that maybe there's something wrong the way our country, and I would include our president. If our president could, do more to protect Edward Snowden.
Yeah.
So this is something. But if people are being penalized, and and we know quite a few, we did a whole conference one time on the people who have suffered from being a true whistleblower, and they suffered.
Yeah.
So. In this case, because the media has given us a strong hint, we ought to pay notice.
We should definitely pay notice. And the thing is, are we the Soviet Union where you can, incognito accuse someone of a crime, that person suffers the consequences without ever having to know? That was the hallmark of Soviet justice. You can denounce comrade so-and-so. Next thing you know, he's off to the gulag, never knowing what happened. Is this what we want?
Yeah.
And I think that's why Rand brings up the hypocrisy. And he calls out Chuck Schumer. I encourage everyone, we'll add a link to the speech, but I encourage everyone to watch. He calls out people like Schumer crying crocodile tears over this whistleblower when the whole thing is political. Come on,
This reminds me a little bit about seeking truth when terrible things happen to our country. President gets assassinated, there's a 9/11 attack. We'll have a commission. We'll get the politicians together and set up a commission and study this and get to the bottom of it, and we want to know the truth. But inevitably, I have lost all confidence in government commissions. I guess there shouldn't be an absolute like that, but the commissions that are the big ones have usually distorted the truth. And this is another example of how they're distorting the truth for political means. And it's probably not been done quite like this. I mean, there's been innuendos and telling stories and lies about, a president that's been going on for a long time. But all of a sudden, making it to the extent that we have this person telling this story, and right now we don't know who he is, and we know he's going to be impeached because it's so serious, and they go on, and they have one goal, and it's been there for a long time. And I think that the American people eventually have to wake up. But I think there's a lot of people right now, getting tired of this. Even the people that might be token Democrats or token Republicans are just sick and tired of this stuff because they see through the nonsense of this back and forth and accusations and all the politicization of what's going on. And that's what happens on these commissions. They're all politicized. And the one I think of immediately is the Kennedy assassination. That commission. That's just to cover up. And I think a lot of people would apply that to the 9/11 commission.
9/11, yeah, exactly. The other thing about this crazy so-called impeachment process is you have, for example, there was a piece yesterday, I think Zero Hedge ran it, The Hill originally reported on Ambassador Taylor, star witness of the Democrats. He's the guy showing that there's a quid pro quo, and it all comes from the transcript of this call. It turns out he wasn't even on the call. He didn't even hear about the call. He read about it in the New York Times. So here's a guy who's a third or fourth hand witness that's the star witness of the impeachment people. So of course you need to do it, which leads to something else that Rand points out in his piece. This is like the Rand fan club, I guess, today, but that's all right because he did a good job. He points out that this whistleblower, as you said earlier, is a little bit different. He didn't point out, like Snowden, here are the embassy cables showing what happened. Here is the data showing that the CIA and NSA spied on you. You can see it for yourself. This is inherently political, is what Rand said, and it's absolutely true. It's of a political nature because the event in question, the phone call, was known to dozens of people, many of whom came to different conclusions about what the call was. Many of them said, I don't see any quid pro quo there. He said there was one. So this is open to interpretation, and it's also secondhand information because even the whistleblower himself, very political, was not in on the call.
Well, the Biden thing brings up a lot of questions too, because if you're talking about quid pro quo, it is so blatant. What Biden did is so clearly, in many ways, a quid pro quo. You do this and help my son get out of this, but the other thing is, and what's so interesting about this is foreign aid is something that I automatically voted against. I didn't think it was authorized in the Constitution, and it's a tool. It's a tool of big government. It's quid pro quo all the time. That's the way it works. And the president has been given tremendous power over that. They'll pass a bill and saying, well, the president can withhold, add to, subtract, have conditions, all this. So the principle of quid pro quo is an absolute, authority given to the president to do it. That doesn't mean that what the charges are being made that it should be purely political, but I think all foreign aid is quid pro quo. We're not giving it to them because we care about the downtrodden, because our foreign aid most of the time never leaves this country.
Yeah.
The money goes to some university or manufacturer or somebody else, and they get it. So it's not really, but it's always designed, and we had trouble keeping the anti-war people together because, if we do foreign aid, we're going to feed the poor people, and there's a war going on there. Of course, the foreign aid ends up into the pockets of probably one of our enemies one of these days. So the quid pro quo is just a fake argument completely and totally, and it's something, though, that has been caught on and they making the accusations, so you're guilty until you prove yourself innocent.
Yeah, exactly. And what this is really all about, and Phil and I, well, you were gone, you were playing hooky. We covered it yesterday about the CIA task force. With the task was to conduct covert action and other actions to undermine the candidate and the president. But what is a big part of that, and I think this whole whistleblower thing is part of, is about people who did not want anything to threaten their Ukraine coup. In 2014, that's what it's all about. In 2014, President Obama, guided by all of his goofy people, decided to have a coup in Ukraine to pull them into our orbit. Hundreds and hundreds of people died. It was disgusting, grotesque, bloody coup. But these people are die-hard. They don't want it to be overturned. So here comes Trump saying, what's the big deal? Why not get along with Russia? Not enthusiastic about Ukraine coup. This Chiarella guy, the whistleblower, he worked with Victoria Nuland. She is the architect of this. Remember? Blank the EU. Here's who we want in power. These are the people he worked with. He also worked with Alexandra Chalupa in 2016, digging up dirt on Trump to undermine him. Super hyper partisan Ukrainians who wanted to not have good relations with Trump. Over and over again, you see this. Vindman himself was born in Ukraine. He, even in his own testimony, he said, well, I was upset because I didn't think we should change our policy toward Ukraine. Well, sorry, guy, you were not elected,
Just think it'd be so boring if we had our foreign policy in place. None of this would happen, it would be gone. I was thinking about this, of the coup and all. I think that's sort of like being born in sin, and the problems that have existed for so long. But what about the constant effort? And we're still there. We're protecting the oil. Well, I understand we're building more bases even near the oil. And I think that's still part of the Obama policy. I think they just don't want Assad to have the oil.
Yeah.
And it goes on. So it's constant. And we supported people that sometimes they're on our side, sometimes they're not, and sometimes we don't even know who it is. But the whole purpose was a quid pro quo. Yeah. We're going to give you money and weapons. Don't shoot at us, but go and shoot at, at Assad.
Yeah.
So everything that we do in foreign policy is it's done not too much without thinking, but it's always done with bad thinking, thinking that it's going to be good, but they hide under the guise of doing what's best for America, protecting our freedoms, protecting our Constitution. And there'll be people who claim now, we've heard it already from the Pelosi's of the world, I have my constitutional duty to do this. I don't really like this at all, to be picking on our wonderful president, but I am going to fulfill my oath of office.
Come on. Yeah. But you are right. A Paul administration would be pretty boring in this way, because when it came to policy in your office on the Hill, Of course, we didn't have any disagreements. The only time we really had a disagreement is when Jeff wanted to move the water cooler somewhere, and we didn't like that. We wanted to stay where it was. So that was our big disagreement, kind of boring. But Dr. Paul nails it, and so both Dr. Pauls nail it. All aid is conditioned, of course, and if Trump did condition the aid, which to me and to a lot of people, it's not clear from the transcript. If he said, hey, you got to look into this Biden scandal thing if you want your money, I don't see it in it. But even if he did do it, as Rand points out, as Dr. Paul here points out, that's no different than even in the last 6 months, even in the last year or so, when Biden said, you better do this, Poroshenko, or you're not getting the money. And then we have Senator Menendez, writing a letter to the Ukrainians saying, if you don't keep investigating Trump, we're not going to give you the money. So if it's about conditioning aid, if it's about quid pro quo, well, let's get in line, because there's a heck of a lot of it, and the line goes on forever. So thanks for watching. Subscribe to our channel. We're getting close, Dr. Paul, to 200,000 subscribers. We're going to be super excited when that happens. Like this video, because that helps them send it out to other people. Go to ronpaulinstitute.org. Get your morning briefing. See what's important, what the articles are that you need to read. Stay with us, and thank you for staying with us.
Very good. And a lot of people, after we do a program or after I've been out on the road, people say, well, what should we do? What should we do? And sometimes it's pretty frustrating to call your congressman or write a letter. They know the frustration there. But it's spreading the message and the word of what's going on, and that's why we have this program. But it doesn't hurt to be involved to a degree into politics, trying to persuade people and hold their feet to the fire. So if you're in contact, point out the inconsistency of this and the hypocrisy of it all. But ultimately, and we've already touched on it, what really controls things is an ounce of prevention. And that is, why are we getting involved like this? And it's just opportunities for mischief and money being thrown around in the military-industrial complex, and how big our empire is, and how strong the dollars are going to be this year versus next year. And all designed, of course, to avoid thinking about the important things. Personal liberties, the size of government, what type of monetary system we have, why deficits are outrageous, why the Patriot Act or the Super Patriot Act is so damaging. They're not even discussed. They have these political things, and the goal up there is power. That's what they want. They want power, because on the big issues, believe me, they agree with each other. They're beginning to now talk about the budget, and it'll be solved. The government is not going to close down. Spending is not going to be cut. The deficit is not going to be shrunk, and it'll continue this way, because bipartisan and philosophically, this country is still locked in saying, well, the role of government is to make us safe and secure and take care of us from cradle to grave, because we can't handle liberty. Well, let's hope we change people's mind, and may become necessary to know how to live with liberty, because some of these promises are going to fall flat. Matter of fact, just look at our inner cities today, and the cities that have promised the biggest government, it's already fallen flat, and it's the whole cities are broke. So people will have to pick up the pieces, and it would be so much easier if we could change the basic principle that liberty is better than totalitarianism. And we're moving swiftly toward a more totalitarian society that's totally broke. So we have a lot of work to do, and a lot of people, though, are thinking along these terms, but the message needs to be spread. And once again, if you can get us some more subscribers to our program, hopefully that'll help. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.